Assam's conflict over land. A video of protester being shot by police then stomped on by a civilian has thrown the spotlight on eviction drive in Assam. But the state's conflict over land with ethnic fault lines goes back decades. Last week, an eviction drive in Sipajhar in Assam's Darang district took a violent turn, leaving two dead and several injured after clashes broke out between the police and protester. A horrifying video showed a protester armed with lathi being shot by a policeman, then jumped on and stomped on by a civilian. Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma has instituted a judicial probe into the deaths of the civilian and has been arrested. In Assam, ethnic conflict over land goes back decades and such eviction drives predate the current regime. What was the Sipajar drive about? The eviction drive in Dholpur in Sipajar, where primarily Bengali speaking Muslims live, was aimed at removing illegal encroachers to free up government land for landless indigenous communities. According to authorities, the drive on Monday and Thursday evicted 1200 to 1300 families who had illegally occupied roughly 10,000 vigas of government land. The drive is rooted in the CM's visit to the area in June, when he promised local communities that the encroached land would be recovered and that the Dholpur Shiva Mandir in the vicinity would get a Manikut, a guest house and a boundary wall. Later, the state budget earmarked for rupees 9.6 crore for agricultural project called the Garukhuti project on the cleared land. The project would promote afforestation and agricultural activities involving indigenous youth. On the request of agriculture department, the district administration declared the area community agriculture land. In June, a smaller drive evicted some 7 families who lived near the temple. Who were the people being evicted? Primarily Bengali speaking Muslims. They are mostly peasants and daily wage earners, while the government alleged they have illegally encroached on the land. Most families, the Indian Express met, said they were moved there at least 40 years ago from districts such as Barpeta and Golpara after losing their homes to river erosion. Many claim they had bought the land from locals at the time. However, most transactions happened without documents and hold little legal validity. On Saturday, CM Sarma accused the settlers of using two things like a mantra: floods and erosion. The Assam government cannot cow down. We are getting outnumbered every day, he said. The landless among the evicted will be given 2 acres. Sifajar, incidentally, is a part of Mangaldoi Lok Sabha seat from where all the Assam Students' Union had launched its anti-foreigner movement of 1979-85. A revision of rolls had showed a large number of new voters, the trigger for the agitation. What do indigenous locals say? Portions of the land in Dholpur as well as larger Garukhati area have been a site of conflict for decades, with indigenous residents claiming their land has been usurped by migrants. Conflicts from time to time have often led to spurts of eviction. Organizations such as Prabhajan Pirodhi Manch and Sangram Satya Samilin, which speaks for indigenous communities, have been demanding that encroached land be freed up. In 2015, some Assami residents, led by Khobat Ali, president of Dakshin Mangalwadi, filed a case under the Assam Land Grabbing Act 2010, seeking a Mangaldoy court intervening in evicting encroachers from village grazing reserve and professional grazing reserve in a number of villages. In Sifaja, in 2013, RTA response said around 77,000 vigas of government land in the area remained encroached for years. The BJP promised to clear it after it came to power. Upanya Hazarika, convener of PMV, said in a press statement on September 20, there had been 5 earlier eviction drives in the area, but it was the local indigenous who were made to suffer as their lands were acquired by agriculture project and the encroachers remained undisturbed. Did anyone among those targeted for eviction seek legal course? According to activists, 200 families from Dholpur 3 moved the High Court against the eviction late last month. In response, the government had filed an affidavit saying the settlers were on government land. The evictions on Thursday came before the petitioners could file a reply. Property demands that they should wait for the final outcome of the case, said Santanu Borthakar, an advocate representing the families. How did the eviction turn violent? Last Monday, about 800 families were evicted from Dholpur 1 and 3 villages. While it happened without resistance, locals and activists were unhappy because it was done without a proper rehabilitation plan. On Thursday, organizations such as the All Assam Minority Students Union along with the public carried out demonstration demanding rehabilitation. Thereafter, the authorities held a discussion with them and a settlement was agreed upon. Those evicted alleged that the eviction was carried out despite the agreement in which the authorities reported said they would put the eviction on hold till the facilities as demanded were arranged. This is where the situation became tense and the spiraled out violence, said AAMSU member Anidun Ahmed of Mangalday near Sipajar. The authorities, on the other hand, alleged that even the agreement, the locals suddenly began to attack the police with sticks, stones, and spears. Darang SP Susanta Biswa Sharma said police did what they had to do in self-defense. On Saturday, Chief Minister Sharma claimed the involvement of the Popular Front of India, the Muslim outfit. What is the extent of encroachment of land in Assam? Land has long been the center of ethnic contestations in Assam, with the common belief that the indigenous Assami were losing its land to migrants from Bangladesh. Often it is alleged that government lands around sastras, monasteries and forest lands around national parks and sanctuaries has been encroached upon. The Brahma committee formed by the previous Sarvanda Sonofal government to make recommendations on land rights said in an interim report in 2017 that 63 lakh vigas of government land was already under illegal occupation. The same year, then MOS for Revenue Pallav Lochan told the assembly that 6,652 square kilometer government land was encroached upon. In 2019, Parliamentary Affairs Minister Chandra Mohan Patwari said 22% of forest land was under encroachment. However, officials will agree such figures are ambiguous. Thus, the MP told the Indian Express the figure keeps varying after we evict, new areas are encroached upon, some areas are not reported. So it is never a static number, he said. Is it limited to migrant communities? No, not at all. Some government land is often occupied by people considered indigenous to the state, especially in districts such as Tinsukia, Dibruga, etc. The Brahma committee's reported suggest that many natives do not own land documents. Many people, including indigenous people, have settled in this land. Since no one has legal titles in the principle, they can all be evicted. But the vulnerability to eviction is largely determined by political circumstances, said political scientist Dr. Sanjeev Barua, professor, Vaad College, New York. He referred to the Assam Accord of 1985. The first AGP government learned this lesson the hard way. One of the promises of the Assam Accord was eviction from the protected public land. Clearly, when the Assam movement leaders negotiated this, they only had so-called foreigners in mind. They ignored the fact that some of the Assam's most indigenous people, like Bodos that were shifting cultivators, had also found their way into these lands. What about the eviction drive? Evictions are common in Assam, but critics allege they have increased after BJP came to power. Drives were carried out by the Sonowal government, including Darang, Sonipur, Amchang and Kaziranga, where violence left 2 dead in 2016. One of the BJP's promises in the May 2021 assembly election was to free government land from encroachers and allot them to indigenous landless people. Since then, drives have evicted 70 families in Hojais, Lanka and 25 families in Sonitpur, Jamuraghat. According to Barua, the eviction in Sipajar was planned to an unprecedented degree. Even the finance minister in her budget speech referred to one experiment of our government was to remove encroachers from more than 77,420 vigas of land in Garukhati under Sipajar block in Darang district, he said. One can only infer that who would be evicted during the eviction drive had featured in the planning of the project. Abdul Kalam Azad, a human rights researcher, said the difference between eviction drive aimed at indigenous communities and minority communities is that eviction in places like Sifajar 1 will see dehumanization of those who are being evicted. It had political and communal intentions, he said. Thank you.